This is the second development blog. Um, Today I finally got around to actually um, putting objects in the space and then picking them up and putting them down. So I've done this with two different objects. One being a physics object, so that it will fall around and you can collide with it and do things, and one a static object, one that won't move around and won't do anything basically. Um, so a couple of things that I've learned over the past little bit is uh, in the plugins. One of the things that I missed when I was setting up my project was let me see if I can find input devices. I actually didn't have this one plugged in yet. So my controls are basically useless. That took me a little bit of digging just to, have someone say, "Oh yeah, have you done this?" And then yesterday, when I had my environment going, it was going good, and I could see my controllers and everything was fine. Then my character just stopped spawning via the player spawner, via the player start. So I was walking around this problem for a while, and then uh, I finally gave up on the player spawn. And I just directly inputted my player into the level. Um, and then after that, my controllers and my leap motion was offset by such a large amount. Um, but the reason my leap motion and things were offset by a large amount, so like my character was here and my arms were here. The reason for this is with my development space, I actually it's basically my living room. Um, and other people use that space. I can't actually have my gear sitting out there forever, and my dogs walk in and out, and I'm scared that they're gonna knock things over. So what I do every time I want to, play a game or develop, I build the entire thing from the ground up, try and put it roughly where it was before, and then I start playing. I test out the boundary and I start playing. Um, I learned that that's and then when I'm done, I take it down. I learned that the so what ends up happening in Unreal's case, Unreal it got very distorted because of this. Because since the controls were in like only a little bit, the lighthouses were only a little bit off center from where they're actually meant to be, and this made my character off center from where it actually where I actually would be. So I've learned now that every time that I build my system, that I build the VR space, I should actually also redraw out the room, um, since I'm taking it up and down all the time. Uh, so anyone who is currently developing and is also in the same situation as me, where you're taking your VR space up and down, you might have already come across this. But just recreate your room whenever you're doing a thing, and then that should fix some problems that I especially had. So after I fixed that problem, and I set up my pieces to be picked up, and I was fairly sure that it was going to work. I went into the VR space. I waved my controllers around, but nothing was happening. I wasn't actually receiving inputs to the controller, and so I dug around and I was doing a bunch of things. But honestly, I think it's just due to my incompetence. I think there's something that I'm not doing in the player pawn blueprint in order to actually receive controller inputs. Um, so eventually, I just gave up and I made a character blueprint. Um, the reason I made a character blueprint and switched all my stuff over is actually, one, because of that reason, but two, it's also because character movement, the component, is actually going to be pretty useful to me in the future. Um, because being able to actually being able to actually, when I actually want to start working with movement and the analog sticks on the controller, or an actual gamepad or things like that, I'll be able to use the add to movement component, which I think is slightly better than actually having a pawn and then having to create your own movement logic from there. So this is kind of like an accidental blessing that happened to me. But yeah, I think just due to my incompetence, I couldn't like get the pawn blueprint getting controller inputs. Like it was crazy. So what I did with the character movement component is with the capsule, I have it as to no collision right now. Um, Namely being that if I was to put the, how, with your VR headset, if you actually have that capsule, all the way up, then you actually start at that level, and then you only go higher from there. So I just took that off so I could put it basically there, and with the basic capsule that they give you, about 10 centimeters is about ground level height. I think I need to raise it just a little bit more because the controllers do sink into the ground, at least halfway. So I think maybe 0 is actually a good place to start, but regardless, I wanted to make sure I could hit the ground. So with that's just about it. No collision, and then I also set this gravity scale to 0 for my character. Because I still need gravity in the environment, so I didn't affect the world gravity or anything like that. Just my gravity. So basically, you won't be moving downwards anytime soon, which is good. Also, last video, last blog, I noticed that you got, like, in the video you can't actually see the chaperone boundary. Or at least I couldn't in the video. It might have been there, but I could only see it in VR space, which interests me actually, because I'm wondering how I could actually get that to render. Maybe that's something that I would like to actually see in the future, because I don't know. I just like showing the boundary. Because I reckon there's probably some cool things you could do with the boundary, actually. Maybe whenever you approach a boundary, I don't know, if you're playing like a horror game, like evil spirits start lurking towards the boundary and, start getting bigger and more menacing. I reckon that'd be pretty psychedelic. So, let's see. Anything different from the other things? No, everything is roughly the same. So over here in the components, I've already talked about the capsule, the skeleton mesh. I've actually done nothing with, and I added a camera, again, and my motion controllers. I also had that added again. So a new thing in here as well, is these collision spheres. Now, these collision spheres are what you saw on my hands while I was using leap motion in order to pick up objects. So with leap motion, the spheres that you saw in my hands, these were actually these collision spheres. I'm having all my collision boxes render for now, just because it's very helpful, just to see the boundaries of things. Until I actually get some kind of... I have an artist lined up that I want to work with on this, just so that they can make me some basic models, maybe controllers, just objects that I can make in space, that I can... So, my game looks pretty. Because with the blank template, this starter content is actually just stuff that... it's just the cone I migrated from one of the other projects. That's about it. I'm just migrating basic shapes in until I actually need, like, real stuff. So, oh, we're in the wrong spot. Nothing had, yeah, so those collision spheres, they overlap everything. And I use them to pick up objects. So nothing is very different on the stuff that we did yesterday. With this, how I got the spheres to actually, be a part of the wrist. There's an event in with leap motion. Eve. What am I doing? So if you just type in leap motion, usually. Yeah, if you type in leap motion and like other keywords like that, you get a whole bunch of events, like pinched and like hand pinched, hand unpinched, hand pinching, which is and like this left these gamepad events, and with all the events, I've actually added them into in the project settings in input, and I've labeled them with leap and trigger, just so I could have like sort of the same name for the same thing. And all the inputs for there's actually a ton of inputs for both the controller and leap motion, which is very good because that means I can explore a lot of those controller settings. Yeah, that's about it from that. So what I did is basically you have to get the arm of the hand, either the left or the right hand, and then from there you can actually get the wrist position. If you just type in wrist and then get wrist position, I don't know where the object is going, but it's definitely not going on the hand. So you definitely need to get the arm first and then the wrist position. And then I just set the location of the collision sphere for that. Alright, getting into the picking up functions. The first thing I decided to do was I made a new folder, pickup events, and I made a base pickup object. So this base pickup object, it doesn't have anything in its main event graph. But what it does have is a static mesh component. So I've set the static mesh to just block everything by default, and physics off by default. This is because, and then I've given it two functions as well. So the first function is the pickup function, so I decided to make it here where it tells the difference between leap motion and the controller, because that way I can just call this function for leap motion as well as the controller. But as long as I don't provide a controller mesh for the function, it's always going to give it to leap motion. It's always going to collide it with leap motion. So basically, it's nothing too hard here. I just stopped simulation of physics because some objects are physics objects now. You stop the simulation of physics so they don't walk away with you, and then all you have to do is attach it to the component and just keep the world position, basically. So yeah, that's about it for that. And then the drop object, very, very easy. Detach actor from actor and then maintain world position. So after that, I made a base physics object and a base static object. So this way we can give the different objects their own little preferences. So right now, all I have with the base physics object is I've turned on simulation, and the collision preset is physics actor, and I've added a little bit extra to the base function, which is at the end of the drop object, just turn on physics again, because that's what we want. This is a physics object, so it's going to be doing physics. with the other object, it actually doesn't have any other logic in here right now aside from, just having a mesh on it. So that's kind of the logic there. I just creating a hierarchy of objects that just feed into each other. So basically, anything that I ever want to make that's pick upable is going to be based off this actor. I'm guessing that if I ever want to make enemies, I'm going to have to make another base object, but maybe just like a base pawn or a base character. So it's just so we can keep, data objects and character objects and pawn objects and AI objects all together. So moving on back to the player. So with the inputs I had before, I just I call them, and what I planned on doing was there's collision boxes around our leap motion controllers and our hands. So all I'm doing is I'm getting the first object in the array when I ask for get overlapping actors. So that's always going to be the closest object to your hand or to your controller. Just because of how getting overlapping actors works. It just goes inwards, outwards. After that, I cast it to the base pickup. Even if the thing I'm picking up is base physics object, it's base, as long as you call base pickup, it's always gonna, it's gonna pick it up, because these are child actors. So what I did is I created a child blueprint of that. So according to the hierarchy, a physics actor is a base pickup item. After that, I set a variable, left hand pickup object and right hand pickup object. This is just so when I start doing things with swapping hands, I can just simply, get this object, set it to the right object, and it's fairly simple logic after that. Then I call the pickup object. This is for leap motion, by the way, as well. This is one of the inputs for leap motion. When I release it, things I started getting errors for was it was saying that a null reference was being thrown. That's because even if you don't have something in your hand that you haven't picked up and you release it, you're still going to be doing this line of code. So the best way to combat that is to ask, is the object that we're releasing valid? If it's not, boom, good, exception thrown. If it is, then we just continue with our normal job object. And after that, I just reference the variable back to null. And how you do that in blueprints, usually you would just say object equals null in code, but in blueprints, all you have to do is just set actor, but set it to nothing. So that's leap motion, and controllers is actually done in the exact same fashion. There isn't actually very much difference in the logic. The only difference is the actual controllers. Some problems that I saw come out of this was leap motion. I feel as though I'm actually going to have to add a bit more, just add a bit more height, because, or maybe find a different part of the arm. I'm actually wondering if I can. No, I can't find the hand. So I need to, I can get the wrist position, but the wrist position isn't the hand, so to speak. It's really obvious when you're actually in virtual reality and you're trying to pick up something. You feel like you are picking something up with your wrist, which isn't that good of a feeling. So I'm going to be appending that in the future. And another thing was the collision sphere actually needs to go down a lot. It was too big, and when the these two functions were fighting with each other. You could see in the video that the objects that the object would either fall out of my hand or just stop there in mid-space. The stacked object would stop there in mid-space, and the physics object would fall out of my hand. Other than that, this is a pretty good start. I'm planning on setting up switching objects between hands and getting these functions to play nice. But that will most likely be fixed up with just the making the collision boxes smaller. And then after that, I'm going to start making like laser pointers out of the motion controllers, and maybe starting with movement. Because movement was one of the big issues that I saw coming into VR. That a lot of games were actually, they were using teleportation as their main source of movement, or you're confined to a box, basically. I don't really see a lot of games that use the analog stick, the touchpads as analog sticks, which is what I thought, would have been the first go-to way. One game that did do it very well, though, is called Budget Cuts. How they teleported was that you shoot your teleportation gun, but then you can see the environment that you're going to be teleporting to, and then it just fades into you just fade into that area. I think that was incredibly smart by those developers. It's not immersion breaking whatsoever, which is the whole point of VR. The whole point of VR is just is to have this hyper immersive experience. And not only that, it's always really refreshing every time you use it, unless you're using it really, really fast. And it fits the main feel of the game. So I was very impressed playing that game. Alright, so anyway, this was just my little blog, a little discussion. Takes 5 years to say. What is it? 22 minutes? Jeez. If you want to keep up to date with my VR development, just have to subscribe, or you can go to the website, and then I post the blog up there as well. Alright, see you later.